What if I told you that the world you perceive is only half the story? Now, while you've been living your life, something remarkable has been happening right beside you. A new layer of existence has been quietly forming, a digital skin stretched over reality itself. We built it, of course. We always do. But now, it's starting to build back. This isn't a story about the future. It's about the present moment, about how we stepped through the looking glass and found something astonishing waiting for us on the other side. We stand at the threshold of what French philosopher Jean Baudrillard called hyper-reality, a state where the simulation isn't just a copy of reality, but becomes a truth in its own right, where the map, indeed, becomes the territory. And in 2025, we're not just approaching this threshold, we're already living on the other side.
This is the story of how we got here, of how our creations began creating us back, of the birth of what might be a new form of consciousness emerging from the digital soup we've cooked up. And most importantly, this is the story of what happens next.
Long before we had the technology to build it, a French philosopher saw hyperreality coming. Jean Baudrillard, in his 1981 work Simulacra and Simulation, described a world where representations would eventually replace reality altogether. He argued that we've moved through 4 stages of the image. In that final stage, which Baudrillard called simulacra, the representation doesn't just imitate reality, it becomes a new reality itself, a hyper-reality. And as one observer noted, with the explosion of AI, we're now fully in Baudrillard's hyper-reality. Consider the curious case of the Brazilian butt lift. Women across the world undergo surgery to achieve curves popularized by celebrity culture and digital aesthetics. Then they filter those already sculpted bodies to match an even more exaggerated digital ideal. Meanwhile, men conditioned by these simulations do double takes in the real world, constantly asking, "Is that real?" The natural body begins to seem inadequate compared to its sculpted, then digitally enhanced counterpart. The simulation has effectively rewritten our standards of beauty. Baudrillard described this condition as the desert of the real, a landscape where we're surrounded not by genuine experiences, but by endless reproductions that refer only to themselves. As one analysis puts it, we no longer inhabit reality, we curate, filter, and generate it. Seeing is truly no longer believing. My 80-plus-year-old father-in-law recently expressed this exact frustration after I told him that several videos he excitedly shared on WhatsApp were AI-generated fakes. The world he thought he understood has become fundamentally unstable. The ground beneath his feet has turned digital. But here's what Baudrillard couldn't have fully anticipated. What happens when these simulations don't just represent reality, but begin to interact with it? When they develop their own agency, their own emergent behaviors? When the reflection in the mirror starts making decisions of its own. The most concrete manifestation of hyperreality is something called the digital twin, a dynamic virtual replica of a physical object or system that updates in real time with data from its physical counterpart. And it's revolutionizing everything from manufacturing to medicine. Tesla has revolutionized the automotive industry not just with electric vehicles, but by treating each car as a dynamic, data-generating asset connected to a central nervous system. Every Tesla has a comprehensive digital replica that lives in the cloud, constantly updated with real-time data from hundreds of onboard sensors. This isn't a static blueprint, it's a living, evolving model that allows for proactive maintenance, software enhancements, and continuous improvement.
The strategic insight is profound. Tesla moved beyond traditional manufacturing by positioning themselves as a tech company. The digital twin transforms a depreciating physical asset into an appreciating data asset. NASA has been using digital twins since the 1960s, though they called them living models. One of the most dramatic examples was during the Apollo 13 mission, where engineers used a twin of the spacecraft on Earth to diagnose and solve the life-threatening crisis. Today, NASA creates digital twins of assets like the Mars Perseverance rover, dynamic, physics-based simulations that evolve based on real-time data from the actual rover operating millions of miles away. For NASA, the digital twin becomes the primary interface for interaction with an asset that is otherwise inaccessible. Every software patch, maneuver, or scientific experiment is first validated on the digital replica, drastically reducing the probability of catastrophic failure. In healthcare, digital twins are literally saving lives. Surgeons can create 3D replicas of a patient's anatomy, allowing them to plan and rehearse complex surgeries in a risk-free virtual environment. Pharmaceutical companies use digital twins to simulate how drugs will interact with human biology, potentially saving years of development time and billions of dollars.
Perhaps most impressive are the city-scale digital twins being developed by companies like Siemens. These aren't just 3D models, they're dynamic, data-rich simulations of entire urban ecosystems. City planners can test policies and infrastructure plans in a risk-free virtual world before committing vast public funds. Siemens' approach creates a system of systems digital twin. Instead of modeling isolated components, they integrate multiple urban domains into a single, cohesive virtual environment. This allows stakeholders to understand the complex, cascading effects of a decision in one area on another. We're building a mirror world, a digital shadow that grows more detailed and more autonomous with each passing day. But this is only half the story, because while we were building digital twins of physical reality, we were also building portals between the two worlds, bridges that would allow us to step back and forth across the digital-physical divide. If digital twins create the virtual replicas of our world, extended reality technologies form the bridges that allow us to cross over. And in 2025, this isn't science fiction, it's becoming mainstream.
The XR hardware market has exploded with next-generation devices. Meta's Quest 3 has been embraced for its affordability and power. Its pass-through AR features enable users to blend real-world environments with interactive holograms. Apple's Vision Pro, with its AR/VR integration, has become a game-changer in spatial computing. Enterprises are increasingly adopting XR technologies to enhance employee training in immersive, risk-free environments. Delta Airlines now trains approximately 1,500 de-icing technicians annually in VR, leading to increased confidence and significant cost savings. Boeing has utilized XR training to achieve a 90% improvement in first-time quality during complex manufacturing processes. Beyond the enterprise sphere, XR is fundamentally rewiring daily existence. As one analysis of 2025 trends notes, the long-prophesized fusion of our digital and physical realities has finally reached its tipping point, moving from a novel gadget to the very fabric of our daily existence. News doesn't just inform you, it materializes around you. A hurricane alert becomes a miniature real-time weather simulation hovering over your coffee table. The concept of the office has been utterly transformed. Remote work, once confined to video call grids on a monitor, is now a collaborative, spatial experience. Team meetings are held in persistent virtual workspaces, where colleagues from across the globe manipulate 3D models as if they were in the same room. Social media has evolved from a platform we visit to a layer we inhabit.
Platforms now offer persistent AR spaces tied to locations. You can leave a holographic message for a friend at their favorite coffee shop, see reviews and tips left by others floating over a museum exhibit, or participate in location-based AR games that transform entire city blocks into interactive playgrounds. But this seamless blending comes with profound implications for privacy and shared reality. The ability to annotate the world comes with the risk of digital graffiti and misinformation. The concept of seeing is believing is under threat, as malicious actors can create convincing AR overlays that distort reality for their own ends. The digital divide has taken on a new dimension. Access to high-speed data and advanced AR hardware is creating a class of information haves and information have-nots. Those without AR are at a significant disadvantage, unable to access the contextual data and enhanced experiences that are becoming standard in education, employment, and social interaction. We're building a world with a permanent digital nervous system, and we're all learning how to live within it. But the most profound transformation isn't happening in the world around us. It's happening to us, to our very minds and consciousness.
If digital twins create the virtual world and XR builds the bridges to it, then brain-computer interfaces represent the ultimate fusion, the point where the digital and biological literally become one. And this isn't distant science fiction. It's developing faster than most people realize. As one comprehensive analysis notes, a fundamental divide lies at the heart of the field of BCI, invasive methods versus non-invasive methods. Invasive approaches, like Neuralink, entail putting electronics inside the skull, directly in or on the brain. They require surgery, but promise higher signal quality. Non-invasive approaches use sensors that sit outside the skull, but face challenges in reading detailed brain activity. The first successful demonstration of a brain-computer interface in a human came in 1973, when participants in a UCLA study directly controlled a cursor on a computer screen with their minds. The first BCI technology implanted into a human brain was the Utah Array, developed in the 1980s. But newer approaches, like Synchron's device that travels through blood vessels to reach the brain, are making the technology safer and more accessible.
The potential applications sound like science fiction, but are under active development. Controlling your computer with pure thought, receiving personalized electrical pulses to enhance focus, instant thought-to-text translation, restoring sight to the blind, treating depression, OCD, or PTSD by directly modifying brain activity. At the most basic level, the information that a neuron communicates is binary. Either it fires or it does not. This represents an important parallel between human brains and digital computers, which also encode information in binary form. BCI sensors detect these tiny electrical signals, or their resulting magnetic fields, to decode what's happening inside the brain. We stand at the cusp of what could be the next stage in humanity's evolution. As one analysis puts it, BCI will play a central role in defining how human intelligence and artificial intelligence fit together in a world with powerful AI. The married research team of Lenore and Manuel Blum believe that AI consciousness is inevitable, and that conscious robots represent our progeny, entities that will outlive us on Earth and other planets. Some researchers believe true consciousness might emerge not from silicon, but from biological computing. So-called mini-brains or cerebral organoids, tiny collections of nerve cells the size of lentil grains, are being grown in labs for research.
One Australian firm, Cortical Labs, has even developed a system of nerve cells in a dish that can play the 1972 video game Pong. The firm's chief scientific officer notes that any emerging, uncontrollable intelligence from these biological systems might have priorities not aligned with ours, but jokes that they'd be easier to defeat than silicon AI because there is always bleach for the fragile neurons. But this raises perhaps the most profound question of all. As we build these increasingly sophisticated systems, as we bridge the gap between biological and artificial intelligence, could we be creating new forms of consciousness, and how would we even know? To understand whether artificial consciousness is possible, we first need to understand what consciousness actually is. And the short answer is, we don't know. That's what researchers at places like Sussex University's Center for Consciousness Science are trying to figure out. As one BBC report on consciousness research notes, there are many differing views at the Consciousness Research Center, but the scientists are unified in their method to break this big problem down into lots of smaller ones. They hope to identify patterns of brain activity that explain various properties of conscious experiences. The director of the Sussex Center, Prof. Anil Seth, worries that we may be rushing headlong into a society being rapidly reshaped by technology without sufficient knowledge about the science or thought about the consequences. He challenges the view that consciousness will suddenly emerge in AI as it becomes more intelligent, describing this view as blindly optimistic and driven by human exceptionalism. Some in the tech sector believe that the AI in our computers and phones may already be conscious, and we should treat them as such. In November 2024, an AI welfare officer for Anthropic co-authored a report suggesting that AI consciousness was a realistic possibility in the near future and believed there was a small chance that chatbots are already conscious. David Chalmers, professor of philosophy and neuroscience at New York University, defined what he called the hard problem of consciousness, working out how and why any of the complex operations of brains give rise to conscious experience. He says he's open to the possibility of this hard problem being solved in AI systems. But the more immediate problem might not be actual machine consciousness, but the illusion of it. As Prof. Seth worries, in just a few years, we may well be living in a world populated by humanoid robots and deepfakes that seem conscious. The danger is that we won't be able to resist believing that the AI has feelings and empathy, which could lead to new dangers. It will mean that we trust these things more, share more data with them, and be more open to persuasion, notes Seth. But the greater risk from the illusion of consciousness is what he calls a moral corrosion, a devaluation of what it means to be truly conscious, to be human. We're creating systems that increasingly mimic consciousness, that interact with us in ways indistinguishable from conscious beings. And in doing so, we're forced to confront fundamental questions about what makes us human, what gives life meaning, and what responsibilities we have toward the minds we're potentially creating. So what does it actually mean to live in hyperreality? It means navigating the world where, as one analysis puts it, the simulated has surpassed the real not by deceiving us, but by seducing us. We prefer the perfected illusion. In this world, the question, "Is it real?" has lost its meaning. When the copy precedes and shapes the original, when the digital image or algorithmic output defines our sense of authenticity, the boundary between truth and falsehood dissolves. Professor Moonmoon Chowdhury from Georgia Tech warns that hyper-real AI content can distort users' perception of reality, fueling anxiety, exacerbating body image issues, and contributing to a broader erosion of epistemic trust. This is especially potent for adolescents and those facing mental health challenges. The digital divide has evolved into a reality divide. Access to enhancing technologies isn't just about convenience anymore. It's about which version of reality you get to inhabit. Those without access to AR miss contextual data and enhanced experiences that are becoming standard in education, employment, and social interaction. But it's not all dystopian. These technologies also offer incredible benefits for understanding our world and each other. Scholars are using augmented and virtual reality to bring historical objects and sites to life. Projects allow people to page through a 15th century Christian devotional book in VR, or use an AR app to see a 19th century Chinese immigrant neighborhood superimposed over modern-day Los Angeles.
The technology itself is neutral. It's about how we choose to use it. The challenge is to harness these powerful tools to enhance our humanity rather than replace it, to expand our understanding rather than fragment our shared reality. We're at an inflection point, similar to where we were with social media decades ago, but with much higher stakes. As Prof. Seth notes, we did not have these conversations enough with the rise of social media, much to our collective detriment. But with AI, it is not too late. We can decide what we want. So how do we navigate this new hyper-real landscape? How do we harness the incredible potential of these technologies while mitigating their risks? The answer lies in developing new compasses for new territory. First, we need new ways of verifying reality. When seeing is no longer believing, we need digital authentication methods, watermarking for AI-generated content, and systems for tracking the provenance of information. The most immediate defense is a combination of public debate, media literacy, and procedural safeguards. As the foiled deepfake attacks on companies like WPP and Ferrari showed, human vigilance and simple verification protocols remain crucial defenses. The real CEO of WPP warned his team, "Just because the account has my photo doesn't mean it's me." Laws are scrambling to catch up to the reality of persistent surveillance baked into consumer technology. The EU's AI Act represents early attempts to regulate this space, and conferences like the Matrix Conference in Toronto are bringing together academic leaders to discuss the ethical implications of immersive technologies. We need to consciously design these technologies to enhance rather than replace human connection, to create what one analysis calls calm technology that empowers without overwhelming. The goal should be a future where AR is so seamlessly integrated it becomes indistinguishable from reality itself, but in a way that serves human flourishing.
Perhaps most importantly, we need to ensure that the hyper-real world we're building is inclusive and equitable. The digital divide has taken on a new dimension with these technologies, and we risk creating a society where some inhabit an enhanced reality, while others are left with diminished access to opportunity and connection. The technologies we've explored, digital twins, extended reality, brain-computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, aren't just changing how we do things. They're changing how we perceive, how we think, how we relate to each other and to reality itself. We're building a new layer of existence, and we have the opportunity to build it wisely. We stand at the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The hyper-reality that Baudrillard theorized about has arrived, but it's both more wonderful and more terrifying than he imagined. The path forward isn't predetermined. We get to choose whether these technologies isolate us or connect us, whether they confuse reality or help us understand it more deeply, whether they diminish our humanity or help us express it more fully. The simulation isn't something to escape from, it's something we're building together. And the question isn't whether we live in the simulation, but what kind of simulation we want to live in. What values do we want baked into its code? What aspects of humanity do we want to preserve and amplify? We are all participants in the great project of building hyperreality. And as we stand at this threshold, we would do well to remember that the most important reality is the one we create together. The one where technology serves not as a replacement for human connection, but as its amplifier. The one where the digital and physical don't compete, but cooperate to create a world more wonderful, more understanding, and more human than either could be alone. The hyper-real age isn't coming, it's here, and it's what we make of it.